We have 3 items on our agenda. Our first one is our first P4 project. This is for Littleton Retirement Residents in Littleton Village. So Jocelyn, are you going to get us started on this one?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I'm going to give a brief overview of the proposal. Didn't prepare a presentation very formal at all, but I have the maps and whatnot if you guys want me to pull anything up on the screen with the submittal. So as Mayor said, it's for a P4 process. Hawthorne Retirement Group has submitted P4 for the development concept entitled Littleton Retirement Residence, which would be located on Parcel H, Tract 1 in Littleton Village. For some background, the applicant property owner did have a pre-app meeting, had 2 of them with city staff, one in July of last year and one in September. The concept that they're proposing is for a 142-suite, 4-story elderly congregate care housing facility on the site. And as stated on their narrative, the Hawthorne Senior Living concept is designed for aging residents who are still ambulatory and desire the unique services provided at our facility. Typical resident is a single woman in their late 70s or 80s who lives within 10 miles of the site. And approximately 10% of the suites are rented by couples. So they estimate the building population would have approximately 156 people. The existing plan development for Littleton Village for Parcel H identifies this parcel as being in the mixed-use category. Defined by the close proximity to Village Park Drive, the Village Plaza, and Central Park, Parcel H shall include locations for mixed use that cater to the needs of those who use Village Park Drive and Village Plaza. Buildings located within Parcel H shall have strong links to Central Park and pedestrian walkways. Uses include residential, medical, dental, office, entertainment, and other specialty commercial uses. So those are all the uses that are allowed on this property.
I'm sorry, where are you reading that from?
The staff communication, but it is also in the plan development for this parcel.
Okay.
Now quickly, an outline of the existing plan development requirements for Parcel H. Residential uses are allowed, and nursing home congregate care is one of those. Maximum density for congregate care is 50 units. Parcel H does have a maximum residential density of 46 units an acre. Tract 1, which is parcels A through J, has a maximum number of units of 600, and the entire PD has a maximum number of 900 units. The height is 55 feet, open space is 20%. There is one setback that on the street-facing side from the right-of-way is 5 feet. Parking must adhere to the city's parking code requirements. And the proposal in front of this evening, the concept would need to amend the existing PD for the following items. They would need to increase in density from 46 dwelling units an acre to 47 to allow congregate care for a total of 142 units. Then increase the maximum number of congregate care units, which is currently at 50, up to 142. Increase the maximum number of residential units in Tract 1 from 600 up to 624. And increase the maximum number of residential units in the entire PD from 900 to 905. And with that, I'll take any questions, or if you guys want to, however you want to do it, Mayor, to go around to give input on the concept.
Pat?
Jocelyn, can you just give us a little history, since some of us are new, just the Littleton Village? This sounds like a project that was in the initial design phase when they proposed doing Littleton Village back in a couple of years ago? Or is this a brand new project they're looking to do?
This is a brand new project.
Okay, so this was never part of the original design phase, or?
The particular concept in front of you wasn't that specifically
Right.
part of when Littleton Village came through as a PD, but the uses did outline uses such as residential and congregate care. Those were uses that were identified in that plan development.
Yeah, total units is what was decided.
Right. Okay.
Carol?
I know that the current residents have a lot of concern, I know you know this too, about density and parking. And I would, could you speak about those two items?
Well, the concept in front of you would require an increase in both density for congregate care as well as increase in density for the overall PD. That's the concept.
Yeah. What about parking?
Sorry?
What about parking in particular? I think that's the existing
Parking is
residents' overall concern, major concern.
Yeah. Well, the way Littleton's code is written, parking, plan development, you have to park based on the city's parking code. So in this particular case, our code does have a definition for elderly congregate care. And so this concept would fall under that use. And the requirements are a half space for a studio unit and 2/3 of a parking space for one bedroom unit. And then one space for two or more. So that's the requirement that they would be required to park at.
So if we allow, I don't know if that's the right word, go along with increased density, are we also requiring additional parking?
I think you can offer that as a comment this evening that is that what, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, that you would want to see additional parking, is that what you're saying?
Since this is our first time through this process, how would I do that?
Just right now.
Right now?
Right now.
Yes, I would very much want increased parking to be provided in conjunction with any increased density. Because we already know we have, even though the existing plans are per code, shortage of parking spaces. I live in Oak Brook, which is the adjacent. We're already without Littleton Village being built out at all. Having cars park overnight, do their overnight parking in Oak Brook. And so we're feeling the push of inadequate parking already. And it hasn't even begun to be built out. Also, number of employees. Do we know the number of employees they anticipate to have? I know it's required a certain number.
Right. You know what, I do not know that in detail, other than it does say in their submittal that the management team does live on the premise. So maybe that's something they could look at, parking for their employees and/or visitor parking.
Right. I'm going to take a guess here that this half space per and 2/3 space per is assuming that a lot of the residents won't have vehicles.
Right, yes, I believe when you read their submittal documents, I think they do have even, like transportation,
Yes,
available.
and that's not my concern. My concern is that in addition to the residents, we will have a considerable number of employees per state requirements for a care facility. I don't know the exact number, but I know there are requirements. And each of those people will have a vehicle likely. It won't be 2/3 of a vehicle or 1/2 of a vehicle. Each of those employees will. So I would like to add to my comments that I would like to know how many employees are expected and to increase parking to one per employee, one parking space per employee, not to be shared with the residents' parking.
I agree with your concerns about the employee parking. I don't think it's a state licensed facility. I think it said that it wasn't state licensed, so they weren't going to have a mandatory number of people. But I do think the employees was not considered in that.
And you would like to have it considered?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah, it's 24-hour staff too.
It's 24, but I don't know. It doesn't say how many employees, but I think it's not going to be as many as would be by a state licensed facility.
But we don't know that yet.
Right.
Whatever number of employees they're really going to have the same number of parking spaces in addition to the current required number of parking spaces.
So they're looking to make amendments to PDC, right? How old is the PD? It's just a couple years old, right? It's a village when it was all.
Village, today.
2013.
So 23, so something that was set up 4 years ago, and it's, already saying that we don't, think that it fits with this use, and looking at this increased density, issues with increase the density from 46 to 47. Well, why change the amendment? Why don't they just make it just 46 units per acre? Fit with the current regulations that are in there with the limits. I think that I don't have a strong desire to completely redo the PD that was just done a couple years ago. Looking at this and looking at this, allowable uses of mixed use. When I think of mixed use, this isn't what I think of as mixed use. That's looks like it was about 20%, or maybe 1/8 of that entire commercial portion of Littleton Village. If you're taking 1/8 of that and making it into residential, I don't know if that's going with the spirit of having the commercial zone and the residential zone right there.
So you did say that this is an allowed use. What were some of the other allowed uses here? And so what were the different options for this particular portion?
I paraphrase some of them. Medical, dental, office, entertainment, employment generating uses, and convenience and specialty commercial. And then in the PD itself, some additional ones are veterinarian, animal hospitals, residential.
So this is falling within the allowable uses, but there was a list of various allowable uses for this particular parcel.
Yes.
And each of those uses would have different parking requirements.
That's correct. Yes.
And so this particular use, is it requiring more or less parking? Do you have a sense of this is one of our lowest parking requirements or one of our highest?
Lowest.
Okay. Which is
Category
concerning.
Residential, yes.
Which is concerning because out of all of the options that we would have, this is the one that may potentially begin to exacerbate a problem that we're already seeing now. So while it's allowed, we do know that parking has already been vocalized here. take me through from just an understanding of the math here, when we talk about the increase in density from 46 to 47, clear. The second one, increase the maximum number of congregate care units allowed from 50 to 142. Is that over the whole PD?
Yes, in the current existing PD, under the uses where it allows congregate care, it has a maximum number of 50 units. The current PD was saying in the world of residential for this particular use of congregate care, it was only anticipating a maximum of 50 units.
Was it anticipating or limiting, saying we don't want anything in this area?
Yeah, limiting. That's probably better.
So I will echo a little bit of Kyle's concern that the initial spirit and intent of the overall PD is, so that would be a significant change. We're essentially allowing a lot more of a particular use than initially intended.
Yes, based on how it was written, I think we could say that the intention was some version of mixed use, meaning probably intended more than one, right? Just one clarification too. So with the PD was very specific on, there was a section that was only residential, and they had a couple areas that were mixed use, and then there are some that are really only commercial. So just if that would help, just to let you know.
So what-
So Carol, sorry, so.
So I think to follow up on that a little bit more then. So overall, would we call this residential then? We're calling this residential? Okay.
It is a residential
So
use, yes.
overall, the residential use would go from 600 to 624. It's just the type of residential now has an increase in congregate care because we know that's a population that needs housing options, et cetera, and different services and want to stay in Littleton. So really, maybe a better way for me to look at this is overall our residential increase is by 24 units, but then the type of residential is what the congregate care. Okay.
Carol and Jared. The going from 50 to 142, would you explain that again?
So yes, in the current PD for the use of called nursing home congregate care, it has a maximum dwelling units of 50.
Okay, pause there, and that's for
Congregate
parcel
care.
H, the one we're talking about?
No, it's for this use specifically.
What area is it? All of
What area?
the whole area, or
Is it
just?
H plus J plus something or other?
No, so in this allowable uses under residential, so let's see.
Multifamily you're talking about?
It's congregate care, it's nursing home congregate care. So there's two categories. One of them says nursing home for elderly congregate care, no more than 50 dwelling units an acre, and that is an allowed use in this category, category 2.
So you said that no more than 50 per acre? Or
Sorry,
50 total
No, 50
units?
total, sorry,
Okay.
not my bad.
50
Then
total,
there's another.
hold on, 50 total in parcel
dwelling
H.
units. In category 2, and category 2 has a couple of, I think it's J and H are in category 2.
Okay, and we know J is proposed to be 2 and 3 bedroom condos.
I'm sorry, it's G and H.
Okay. And what's G proposed to be?
G is,
Multifamily apartments, isn't it?
yeah, so G is already, it's the Amley Apartments that's being constructed right now.
Right
So
now.
that's multifamily apartments. It's interesting that it does say,
Is this a map that you can bring up, Jocelyn?
yeah, let's see if I can, maybe if I can do it. Oh, no, it's so hard to read. You'll have to see if you can see it. That's not it. It's a table in the approved PD plan. So this is the first page of that, of the plan that was approved in 2013. And on the second page,
There's the map of the tracks.
this is where it talks about all the allowed uses. And so that's what this side is over here. And I was reading from
No
that.
wonder you were reading with great intensity. That doesn't mean a thing to me.
So it just, what it's showing you is on category 2, it is an allowed use for congregate care with a maximum of 50 dwelling units.
And why would we want to go to almost 3 times that? No, more than 3 times. No, 3 times that. To 142.
So my goal or role here is to present the project, not necessarily to defend it.
No, but not as a defendant, but what is the thinking behind why?
I
Okay.
think they just feel there's a need. I'm just guessing, but.
Now, I would myself question the assumption that it is for women who already live within a 10-mile radius, because having lived there right almost on that spot for 30 years, I don't think that there are enough, that there are 142 women of that age with that kind of money that would want to move there. I just seriously question that. I think what it probably is bringing in people's mothers who live in Highlands Ranch. People who live in Highlands Ranch bringing in their mothers to live there. And so I don't want to get caught up in we're serving our existing population that is aging, because I really would want proof of that if that ends up being part of a decision-making factor. I would want demographic proof that those women do exist, waiting for placement.
Did that say 10 miles?
10 miles.
Well, Highlands Ranch is 10 miles.
Yeah, but I don't think there are a whole lot of 70 and 80-year-olds living in just my opinion. And that's why I'm saying I would want demographic proof that we are actually serving our own population rather than serving people being brought in from wherever to live close to their kids who live at Highlands Ranch.
Jerry, Kyle, and Peg.
So we're increasing by 24 units is what we're being asked to consider? Is that what it is? Is that 24 units?
Well, there's several things. Yes, one of the increases is there's a maximum number of 600 units allowed on tract 1, which is parcels A through J. So yes, that is being increased by 24.
Right, so we're looking at a total of 24. The reason I say that is
Can you go to parcel A and J on here? So the sheet before it, the sheet,
No, we want the sheet.
what I'm getting to is
Better map the design guidelines.
that one, right?
Which the map is further on down here. Sorry, Jerry.
that's great. Did you have a question, Karina? or what?
I wanted to understand what area she was talking about.
So I was on planning commission when we originally did the rezoning on this thing, and we got to 900 total units. And again, the idea of this whole meeting, I think, is so the applicant, are you guys the applicants back there? Yeah. So is that you can just hear from us. I know there's no dialogue between us and that kind of thing. But I know to get down to 900 units was a challenge. I think some of the proposals came in a lot higher, so we really struggled to get to 900. And now, if we start tweaking it, we give parcel H or J or whatever we're looking at 24, 25. And then the next another development comes in. Debbie, would you just calm down?
Big legs down here.
I'm concerned that another developer, because we have several developers over there. I know we have Richmond and Century, and then that they're going to keep coming and say, hey, I need 10 more, and we won't be able to give it because we've already done it. And they'll always tell us that they don't have enough economics, they need more units type thing. So I'm struggling with the idea of increasing the total overall, because like I said, when original plans came in at 1,000, and so we worked really hard to get it down to 900. It had a lot to do with Overbrook, not to mention the Centennial who was around it. A lot of folks came in, so density is a big thing over there that we really worked to get down to 900. I think the parking was another one. I know for senior parking, and I manage senior property, I know a little bit about them. And I realize they do get cars, they don't drive a whole lot, but they do park cars. They do have cars. It's a tough thing for seniors to give up. They hang on to that car for as long as they can until family finally makes them give it up. So if we're only looking at, I don't know how many parking places was it? It was like 20% or something like that.
99 out of 100.
Yeah, so it wasn't a whole large number. And then on top of that, when you have seniors, guess what? You have a lot of folks that come visit them. So you have a lot of visitor parking. That becomes an issue. Where do they all park? They park on the streets. And guess whose streets they'll park on is going to be in Oak Brook, because the Centennial side is all fenced off, basically. You don't go through on the north. You don't go through on the north. You don't go through on the east. So parking is a big deal. Staff, I don't know what staff would be. Maybe could be 5-6 people in the daytime, nighttime. So that's not a large number. But we do need to make sure. I would like to see it is. I'd like to see that we have full parking spaces, as you said, not a third parking space. But if we're going to have, say, 6 employees, whatever it is, it should be 6 parking spaces. Increase the visitor parking. I didn't see the visitor parking, and I didn't read every line of every little drawing, I have to admit.
I don't think it's there.
Yeah, so I didn't see it in there. So that's something I want to make sure we have lots of parking for visitor parking. What was the other thing? I guess that's the biggest thing. To get to 900 was a fight. That's when we had a lot of people. I can't remember, it was like 100 people would come to these meetings. Were you on council then? I can't remember. Yes, but eventually went to you. So, and you can remember some of the crowds we had. It was a lot of them were Centennial folks. Also,
They're right on top of
yeah,
it.
but so I think the 900 unit total is very important to state, because that is sort of a promise that the city had made at one point to Littleton residents and also Centennial residents. So that's it.
Okay, Kyle?
To go back to what Carol was saying, that the 50 congregate units total, that was for that whole map right there. So there basically would be no other opportunity to have congregate housing put in
Yes,
then?
that's correct. It was only allowed on use category 2, which on this map is G, and the parcel we're talking about.
So it was only allowed in those 2 areas, and then...
And then 50 was the maximum.
Okay.
Kyle, if I may just chime in on that, if I may. It's okay?
Yeah.
Cool. So the total 900 units, of that, 512 of them were multifamily. So is this just going to be considered still multifamily? Is that correct? And the other part, 388, would be the single homes. That's what made up the 900.
Which were the single homes are over on the
Yeah,
residential side?
on the part here that says
Track 2?
Yeah.
Right.
East side.
Yeah, great, yeah. So yeah, I mean, get hung about the mixed use. I mean, it's a very single use in this one section. I realize other things around it might be different uses, but I don't really see that as being specific mixed uses within that one parcel there. It seems like this proposal is, asking us to give up density, if you will, increase the density, give something back to them so they can do this. I don't see what Littleton Village or Littleton would get back in return, saying, hey, we will give this. I mean, was there something else that, what benefit do we get by increasing these limits that were set there for a reason?
That was a big part of the discussion, too,
Yeah,
for 900 versus 1,000.
Right.
You're actually right.
I mean, I might be willing to listen. Is there some percentage of it that's affordable housing? I mean, I didn't see anything about how much these are going to cost. Is this going to be
Cheap.
not cheap? Is it going to be quite expensive? I mean, so we're looking at places for our older residents to maintain their places in the community here, but are they going to be able to afford it? And the other concern that we hear all around the whole metro area is affordability of housing. And if this isn't going to be affordable, it's not really helping us in that way. I mean, I can make an argument saying, yeah, we could, if we made 50% or whatever the number is, affordable units, but we'd have to be able to make it a little more dense. That might be some way to have a discussion there, but I don't really see that being discussed yet.
Okay. And in addition to all those great things that people have asked, I'm looking at the use. It says Hawthorne Retirement Group is proposing an age-restricted, 60 years and older, 142-suite elderly congregate housing facility as defined in Littleton zoning regulations as congregate housing, a residential facility for more than 8 elderly and/or handicapped persons within which are provided living and sleeping facilities, etc., etc. If the definition of congregate housing is not confined to elderly, but the building supposedly is for elderly, could this then become a non-elderly facility?
I can sort of give you an answer on that. I know in the properties that we own and manage is that there's a certain percentage that you can allow up to, and you can keep it below a certain number. But that is one of the issues with older people, is you bring in younger people who are disabled. It is a tough mix.
I mean, if they're saying this is designed for X.
Unless there's a limit on it, you're absolutely right.
And that's a concern to me. Now, it's a separate concern of whether or not enough people of that age can afford to live there, but if it's designed for such and such, it seems to me it clearly needs to have that locked in.
Are you asking how can that be locked in?
No, I'm just saying the way this is being presented isn't, and so I think they need to rethink whether or not they can actually build something that could meet that expectation. You know, is there, I mean, I guess they have to go back and look at the population that they're drawing from. Can they really do that?
Other questions? A couple comments related to the parking. I think this is going to be a challenge for Littleton Village ongoing, and the opportunity to help to control that happens at this point, happens before something gets built, and we have probably inadequate spaces in our code, hence inadequate spaces get built. Parking does not make money. Parking eats up land, and land costs money. So I think their analysis, and I think on much of this, I defer to their knowledge of their industry. And I think that their analysis of the number of people that will come with cars is probably pretty spot on, just in terms of what I see on a regular basis, like at Windcrest. There's not a lot of cars at Windcrest, and there are a lot of people, but there is, you know, there's that stubbornness with the car, but I think that there's also a point at which that stuff starts to evolve. So I think that maybe a little bit more information on truly what the trend is, validating those claims even more. It is concerning about the visitors, and I know that they've indicated that they have a very nice van or bus type thing that they will use to commute people around, and I think those are very effective for these retirement centers. Most of our retirement centers have those, and most of them that build now do have those to help with that mobility. And then they also indicated that they would use that on special days like Mother's Day and things like that, where there may be extra number of visitors to coordinate. So I think there is a recognition of a parking concern. There does seem like there could be a number of staff. They do have, it's 24/7, and they do, even though they're not offering medical, they do offer the cooking and cleaning. So there would be, I would imagine with 142 units, I don't know what to staff that up against, but that would have to be a consideration. So I do think that the parking needs to be, and there may be some creative ways to handle this too. What we don't want out there is we don't want people stealing each other's parking. So we don't want the people from the apartments coming over and somebody else's. We don't want, maybe a congregate care parking over in front of the residential. So I think there may be a way that if it maps out and makes sense, that we could also help with some management and control of that. Knowing how many employees would be helpful. I think that Littleton Village, when we did approve it at the 900, and then nothing happened, and it just kind of sat there, and then we started getting proposals in from builders, and they were residential builders, and it went down to 450. And they came in and said, this is what we want to do. We're your two builders. This is the land that's zoned for this, and we're only going to put 450 on. And then what happened, unfortunately, is I think there's just been a really unfortunate shift from the commercial, the hope that that commercial would be coming in and that there would be larger parcels over there that, they talked about a Kohl's at one point, or a Walgreens.
Talked about Lowe's.
No,
Fancy restaurant.
Well, there's been,
Scale restaurant.
there's been 4 different plans, yeah.
And so the commercial was intended to have some substantial anchors and walkable restaurants and kind of lifestyle stuff, and then also in service of the hospital there would be obviously some medical and those types of non-sales tax generating entities. And that has just not come to fruition. I mean, there's a Starbucks going in. And it's really unfortunate that hasn't happened. And what I hate to see is I hate to see us, not us, but I hate to see the developer failing on the commercial side of this, because what's happening, and we're seeing it right here, is the residential creeps in. Because you can always build places for residential, and you will always fill them. There is a need, there is a housing shortage, there is no doubt about it. Seniors want to get out of their big homes. They are losing their partners. They don't want to live alone. This is feasible, and I think that the challenge is that we have a very difficult parcel of the Littleton Village where we are just not seeing that balance of commercial. That's just that concerns me a lot, and that's not something that can be dealt with as part of the way the market's working. I also would like to have some more information on kind of understanding what works in this type of arena. So one of the things that this entire thing was built for was the whole walkable, the whole kind of creating a community out there. And so what does that look like? How does that interface in so that the community continues to stay rich? And I think having a diversity of ages out there is great. But there doesn't seem to be much consideration. It's kind of like they come in, they stay in here, and then we put them on a bus if they want to go shopping. And so how does that start to look? And I guess those are my main comments. I think that the congregate, my guess, and I would like to have this explained if it comes back to us again at zoning, would be, I'm assuming that the reason that the 50 congregate doesn't work is because it just doesn't math out for the developer to put only 50 units, and that 142 is the more, makes the balance sheet look better. But I go back to why did we only say 50? And I don't remember why we only designated that there would be 50, that we wanted to control, not have that happen, in a big form there. Was it that we wanted to definitely allow that use at least? So and does that matter, I guess? Now here we are, 5 years later, things have changed too, it's fast, 5 years, and a lot has changed in the way that property is developing. So those are just some of my thoughts.
I got part on the 50 units thing. When we did talk about that, we talked about residential being on the east portion, almost a third of it. And then it was going to be lighter residential as you move forward to what we hoped was going to be a large commercial. At one time, it was going to be a Lowe's, and it's going to be, then, people didn't want a Lowe's, so we went to different things, and nothing has happened since then, of course. But that's what it was. It was trying to phase it, because there's a park area, as I recall, in there, too.
There
So-
is.
Right, yeah, so the idea was to have it less density, sort of, kind of, as you got closer to the park, as you got closer to commercial.
And it was,
Did you have a comment?
Yeah, a comment I have. Well, how about if we look at something in between 50 and 142, instead of going all the way to 142, because that's a big leap. So if we look at something like, step it up to 100, that, something kind of a compromise kind of thing, it seems that might reduce the mass of the building. I'm concerned about the mass of the building, that size there, because it's not that kind of area. It's much lower scale, and so that's going to be kind of a sticking up thing. And then having to do with use, concern about noise. We have an age that is going to have probably a lot of incidents. I know that whenever there's a head injury, that they have to have the emergency people come. So can we require things like no sirens?
Karina?
following up to what Jerry was saying with intent, again, this was intended to be a more walkable community, and some of the uses were designed so that it may not require the level of parking and cars needed. People may downsize or choose to not have as many cars because a lot of the things that they may want or need in their day-to-day lives would be there. So,
But they aren't.
but they're. And so again, we come back to, we understand some of the shortcomings. And I would want to try to, again, as far as, I don't want to move further away from its intent. I want us to try to find a way to get closer to its intent, that there is more commercial. I would truly want to see more of a, if we're going to have this level of density, that there's a mixed use, so that there's other things to interact with other than strictly residential.
Was the original goal maybe for you to more the streets of South Glen? Is that what they were sort of going for back? Okay.
No,
Yes, it was when it was presented to the Planning Commission.
not when I was on the planning commission, it wasn't.
Stapleton-like-ish? I mean, kind of a residential area with
It
some...
was really residential, multifamily, commercial. It was like
Right.
almost like thirds.
Like a good grade, you have, the single family, and then there's, then you get people that, basically apartments above and shops and,
Yes.
and restaurants below, and then commercial on Broadway there.
Definitely commercial on Broadway, but I don't remember the mixed commercial ever. I mean, there's been 4 plans that I've seen. And I don't
The streets of South Glen are very much very retail heavy.
Sure.
And the residential is all, in terms of how maybe any kind of correlation, it was maybe the city park, that 10-acre park and that kind of walkability of that. But it was always divided, that the residential would be on the backside and the commercial would be up along Broadway. And that was also part of the concern with Centennial, even though, too bad, so sad. It's our city, but that was part of their concern too. They didn't want to hold. And then I think we also wisely said, even though it's not miles away, we don't, Centennial has, South Glen is not too far away, and so we'll keep our, but the thing is that there were 250,000 square feet, am I saying that right? 250,000 square feet of commercial. And it's just not developing as such. And I think that's the biggest problem out there right now, because that's part of the challenge that we're having with the residents too. They were sold that. They were sold that they would have that possibility, be able to stroll through the park, go have dinner at some cute restaurant up there, and then go back home. So I think that the vision has definitely shifted. The actual has shifted from the original vision. We'll just have to be careful.
Who owns this parcel?
relooking that.
Some of that mice type.
And property.
It's changed hands, I think, three.
Yeah, I think it's Century.
Century owns it?
So, but let me look and see if I can.
Century is, yeah,
I'm hearing murmurs of yes.
I hear a nodding head.
As in Century, the same as the developer who,
Century Communities.
then might they be in a position to, somebody said that there hadn't been a whole lot of giving, you were probably saying that, giving back to the community in return for requesting concessions here. Might Century be willing to work with us on parking? Because they have parcel J, and they were the builder for a good deal of the single family. And we have significant parking, even though Century has been clear when I talked to them that they have followed the required parking to the letter of our requirements and not 1 inch more. Were they going to give? Well, we give, they give.
I think, well, I'm not sure Century's the one we would, these guys are buying it from Century, and so they would be the ones that we would be working on that.
They could work with Century if Century wants to make the sale.
Well, then maybe somebody's going to buy it from them, and they're going to want to slide down the slope even more. I mean, I'm not happy with this. I don't see that we have to do anything. I think it's really important that we try to get what was promised out of this.
I agree with you completely.
Already a little sliding down, but to think even that the people who live there are going to shop in Littleton is naive, because there's some nice places to shop. In fact, I shop in another city for groceries. Yes, would you believe that? But I mean, and we have people who take the city bus that shop where I shop. You know, the elderly bus, or that anyway.
Shop and go?
Yeah, the shopping cart thing. I mean, I see the bus come and go. So, you know, people don't just behave the way that they're designed in the plan to behave.
Well, Century has not been kind to us in Littleton Village at all. And so, hearing your point still, by facilitating someone else buying the property that Century wants to sell, I don't think we owe them anything. And we do owe a lot to the people who bought houses there and are finding that parking is in their front yards and things already.
A question, someone asked if this is a heavier use of parking than what would have been there prior, or this is a lighter use of parking?
In the context of residential uses, this is a lighter requirement in parking in our code. Yeah. So if it was multifamily, it would be 1.5 spaces per unit, and this one has the half and 2/3 of a space per unit.
So this property could have a mix of residential and retail and
Yes,
et cetera.
yes. Yeah. So the Amley Apartments, that's the one on G and F, I think. They have, not a huge amount, but they have some commercial along Village, along the street frontage there,
Some little shops along there.
for example.
It's just, again, being sales tax based, and I think that it's any chance that we can make sure that we get some decent retail in there that would produce, because I think that when the offices, whatever that is, they do not generate any sales tax at all. Doctor's appointments, a dry cleaner, hair salon, no. So it's...
This is a major corridor, so again, we're our ability to attract commercial in places in our city, it's becoming less and less. And so where that opportunity still has the greatest potential of existing, I think we need to try to help make that still happen.
Okay, is there any other comments? Okay. Thank you very much, Jocelyn, and thank you for coming.
Thanks for having us.
For participating in this.
Love to see it get built.
Thank you. Okay, our next item is, are you guys ready? Need to set up a little?
Sam was going to give us this, like 5 minutes to set up.
Okay.
Yes, no,
Right.
5 minutes? Oh, I can get it.
So, wait till they come in.
So can I ask just sort of, so this is our first P4, right? This is the first one we've done. So this is the typical process. We give our input. Obviously, they're not
I believe so.
they're not allowed to participate.
wanna bring it?
Jocelyn does her thing.
wanna bring it?
They basically are taking some notes, hearing what we're having to say, and take it back to the developer, whoever, and say this is what we're hearing.
You're going planning commission next.
Yeah. So
They already
went through it.
that's sort of was my question. So
What did planning?
what the planning commission is basically saying, here's what we've done, our zone in the past. You guys are asking for exceptions here.
We didn't get planning.
Right, that's what I was getting at. So,
That would have been good to
We
have.
can do that in the future.
Yeah.
They did first reading at planning commission already?
No.
No, they haven't submitted anything.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's what I thought. I thought they said planning commission. I thought it.
No, they saw the before.
Well, the P4, right.
So,
So the next step is for them to
Submit something.
excuse me, Gesundheit. So next step is, what do they do?
well, it's up to them. They don't have to do it.
File an application, they can choose to maybe just drop their project. They're gonna take this input, and I expect they're gonna go back and think long and hard and rework what they're gonna do.
Since I was going to say, Mayor, just quickly, this is our first P4, so if you have any feedback on that, then certainly let me know, and we can fine tune the process for the future. Because we will be having these, we've already got another one scheduled.
I think just for me at least, as you can tell by my questions, I just wanted to sort of have the background, and Jerry was great about, filling us in as to what planning commission had done in the past, or what you agreed to. So, to a lot of everybody's point, if that's what you guys studied so hard on and negotiated, I guess, or decided, then, I agree with, maybe it was Peggy, we give 24 units here and then 24 units down the road to somebody else. I mean, when does it become just too much? Yeah. Okay.
Okay, cool. So this evening we have a really fun presentation. Everyone knows Bill Nagel. Yay. Retired now from Petal, but not from everything else. And he called me up one day and he says, I just want to show you something. It's kind of cool. And I'll buy you breakfast. Let's go. I want you to see this. And so we showed up. Gary was there. And they started talking about this, cycling without age. And their enthusiasm was contagious, and talking to Gary about, and he's gotten so deep into this and what he's done and how it's working, and that they're doing it in Lakewood, which I'm automatically, we gotta do it. But it was just, and it just started to make so much sense for our community, and I thought, wow, this is something we should at least talk about and see if we can bring it. It's a really incredible program. It's volunteer-based. It's not a drain on any budget. It's an absolute, I think, an asset, a quality of life issue, particularly for those who are no longer able to really cycle on their own. So, and of course, we have the most amazing trails, and that's already a pre-built opportunity for everyone. So these guys did not give up, and they stayed diligent on this, and they have now put together a presentation. They do have an ask, and if council, after the presentation, can ask some questions and have some dialogue, and then if council is interested in supporting this, it can be put on we are really short of meetings in June, and we have one in July. So if we want to do this, and they will explain a little bit of the urgency, we can get it on the meeting for budget item if it's necessary. So I just want council to lay that groundwork so that as you go into this, you can kind of have an idea of where we might end up. So, have a familiar face.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Mayor. As an element of introductions, I'm Phil Cernanek. Gary Hardy, who is here with us, who's been on TV the last couple of nights, is the administrator for the program in Lakewood. And what is exciting for them is they've actually have their third Trishaw. So they've gone from 2 now to 3. Also here is Barb Loads. Barb is with Visiting Angels. She's been one of the pilots in the Lakewood program. And Barb is here because she's supportive of this and has also been reaching out to facilities as well as others to set up a parallel to the city's seating of a program if you so choose to go forward. And then Bill Nagel is going to be talking about some of the logistics. And to put some time frame on this, this is not something that we've put together in an agenda for the last month. It's something we've been working on over the last year, or actually a little bit more than that now. And want to be in a position to share this because this is an opportunity for the City of Littleton to get involved in seeding this opportunity to help as far as our seniors are concerned. And the reason why I say seeding is there's a collaboration that's involved, and I'll talk a little bit more about this a little bit later, but I want you to hear, or we want you to hear a little bit about the excitement around the program, and that's where Gary's going to take us through, and he has the background with some of the statistics. But one of the things that started us down this path at least a little bit is taking a look at the Boomer Bonds survey. It's not a bond program, it was just a survey that was done primarily of city staff. Many of them are no longer here, but they went through and they said one of the things that Littleton does not have as far as infrastructure in supporting our aging population that's here is dealing with socialization and transportation. And so those were identified items. And so we realized that it's not a primary responsibility of the City of Littleton, so we're not looking for you to take over the program, but what we're looking for you is to provide an investment that can seed the program by an acquisition. The city already is involved in senior housing. I'm sure that all of you are aware. It's included in a little bit of the PowerPoint, and I'm not going to read it as we go through. But this would not be the first foray into doing something for our senior population. And with this, what we've done is Gary has a great amount of knowledge. He's also been leaning on the CWA, Cycling Without Age infrastructure that exists, where this is being done in other cities and other locations, not just in the United States, but actually internationally. And Gary's going to tell you a little bit more about that and provide you some of the excitement. And I've been to his house. I've ridden in one of the Trishaws. And if you're looking for data, we didn't overwhelm you with a lot of that, but Gary has a lot of that, and they've been operational since September last year. Gary? Yeah, I started the Lakewood Bicycle Advisory Team primarily to help Lakewood become a more bicycle-friendly community than it is now. We've been kind of mired at the bronze level. We're surrounded by silver. Golden, Arvada, and Denver have all moved up to silver level bicycle-friendly. And about almost 2 years ago, it'll be 2 years at Thanksgiving, I saw the first presentation of Cycling Without Age, which began in Copenhagen in 2012. It was kind of a serendipitous beginning, and it has exploded. There are Cycling Without Age affiliations in at least 37 countries, starting in Copenhagen, and I think there are, I'll figure this out. These are just a couple of pictures of some of the senior communities that have been in Littleton for a while or relatively new. And as Phil pointed out, it is a growing demographic, and so there's certainly a need there. There are 44 affiliations in the United States. There are 6 affiliations in Colorado, and I'm proud to say that Lakewood has the largest and most active one. We started fundraising
in January of 2017 and ordered our first trishaw in April. City kicked in for another one in May, and they arrived in September of last year. And so since then, we have been operating, we've done 166 rides since September 18th and have served over 70 residents of Eaton Senior Communities and a few miscellaneous residents from other places in Lakewood. One of the advantages that you have, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because you probably know Littleton better than I do, but that Mary Carter Greenway with all of the wayfinding is almost an ideal place to operate, to get the seniors into nature and have a place that's attractive. These are some of the places where you can stop and just visit and share stories. One of the things that's been exciting to me is the number of people who've come to me and said, I want to be a pilot. I saw the TED Talk by the founder and I said, I want to do this. And for 9 months, I wanted to do it so bad I could taste it. I could not wait to get that trishaw. I had sleepless nights worried about whether I could raise the $8,000 that we needed to get that first one. And then my wife said, I'm on board. And Barb came along and said, I'm on board. I've trained 21 pilots, and every one of them has come to me and said, I'm a cyclist and I want to do this. And so that's pretty neat. The other thing that we've learned is that the pilots probably get as much or more out of this as the residents do. I want to share one story. One of my early rides, a gentleman named Bob got on our trishaw, and we started to leave Eaton Senior Communities, and Bob says to me, and he's in his 90s, he said, I had to give up flying 10 years ago. My doctor said I had to give up flying. I reluctantly gave up flying. I said, were you in the military or the airlines? And he said, no. He said, I just did it for my business. And I said, what was your business? He says, does the address 6800 West Alameda mean anything to you? And I go, yeah, I grew up around here. Do you remember Roller City? Oh my God. I learned to skate there when I was 8. And he says, I'm probably the one that taught you to skate. I built, managed, and owned. And then the memories that we shared with each other, seeing the Alameda Corridor grow and change, and kind of the rise and fall of the Alameda Corridor. It's now in its recovery mode. These are a few pictures that we stole from the Cycling Without Age website. One of the things is bridging, generations, getting the elderly re-involved with the younger members of the community, and I think that picture says it all. We talk about sharing memories. When Ole Caso talks about you reach a point in your life when all the people who've experienced what you've experienced, pretty soon all those people are gone, but you still have stories to share. And when you're gone, your stories are gone. And this is an opportunity for us to carry those stories on and see things and hear things that we haven't heard before. Barb has taken some of our passengers out, not for wine, but for ice cream. And that's been a big hit. We've done a couple rides with grandsons and granddaughters and their grandparents. And what a neat bonding. The story, if you saw the news last night, was one of these world-class grandsons wanted to do something special for his grandmother on her 86th birthday, and it was just phenomenal. So all these stories come from Copenhagen, that the bonding that goes on, people with dementia lose their frustrations and actually come back to their nursing home with a raised spirit. A daughter's out with her father who had been widowed for 2 years, and she looks over at her and she says, oh my God, this is the first time we've seen him smile in 2 years. And look, who's having fun here? I was with Kelly Workman yesterday, and we spent about 2 hours with her and her filming crew, and she said, look, Gary, you haven't stopped smiling since I got here,
And before you leave that one, any of you that had a chance to see the clip from Channel 4 News from last night recognize they led up with a couple of teasers during the elementary show that was on before that. But if you look at the grandmother that's there with her grandson, and then you look at Barb's face, I would swear that Barb's smile is 3 times larger than their 2 smiles combined, which were already very broad. So,
Yeah. That says it. And this is one of the French pilots with some French residents, and you know. So at that point, I'm going to turn it over to Bill. So that little arrow there.
And Kelly, the newscast lady, told Karen this is her favorite story she's done all year, right?
Yeah, they were fully engaged in presenting this.
So my background in this, Gary's a customer at the bike shop, and when he proposed or talked to me about this a couple of years ago, my father-in-law, who lived with us full-time, 90 years old, Scotty, would have loved to have this available. And I said, this is just too much of a home run when I watched the TED Talk and the YouTube video. And it's really, I think everybody, we can go around here and all of us have or have had elderly parents or elderly relatives that could use this service. So when I said to myself, like, this is, for me, this is the real deal for you, for all of us. And then if we go to the community, everybody's affected by this. And the joy that somebody, and just personally, that Scotty could have got out of this, he's no longer with us, would be really amazing. So I said, when I got Gary and Phil and Barb, and we kind of all rallied around this, I just think it would be an awesome thing for the community, and it won't cost the community much, and the community will get much out of it, a whole lot. So we have a website that we've developed, and the way it'll work is we'll train pilots. Phil and I will be trained, Barb's trained, and we'll train others, and we'll need, the training part of it has to be organized, and we'll take care of that, and then the participants within the community will organize all that stuff. We just need the city's help to get this thing rolling, per se. And that's, I think.
And the part that we didn't mention is, what the seniors get is just unbelievable. But it engages the community by getting the pilots involved and saying, we want to be involved in Littleton. And I love volunteering in Lakewood, but Littleton's my grounds. And how do we engage our community? And our seniors have given us so much. So how can we enhance their quality of life? Yeah. I just think we need to ask ourselves those questions. They're the forgotten folks. I'm with 80 and 90-year-olds every day. And it's just, their stories and their wisdom. And it's just...
So if we look down the bullet points, just real quick here, because of time, the acquisition and ownership, at least of the first one, we're looking for the city's help. Barb is involved on the private sector part of this equation, and we're hoping with some of the...
I'm hoping we can get 4 entities. Visiting Angels can go in for a quarter of it. If I can get 3 others that we can get to buy in on it, then if the city of Littleton had one, and then the separate sectors had one.
So we kind of have this vision of a private sector unit and a city unit to begin with. So if we can get the city's help for that, that'd be wonderful. The storage, charging and recharging, we've contacted the South Suburban, and they have this facility that we can use and charge, so that part's taken care of. Maintenance, spare parts, and replacement parts, that's Pedal, and Pedal will take care of that part of it. Training the pilots is for here at this point, and then I think once we have trained pilots, they can train pilots. That would be the plan. Scheduling and execution, that'll be part of the website, and that's kind of not, I'll give you guys the address for that, you can go poke around, but we'll have that attached to that, and it'll be pretty, my vision would be, and I've talked to some web people, to be pretty seamless. So, and passenger recruitment, that would be with the centers, that we contact. Phil, do you want to talk about the ones we'd be targeting with the city?
Well, we certainly have quite a few that are at the city that are served somewhere either within their own transportation program or through the omnibus that the city has. But we have everywhere from Amity Place to Libby Boards to River Point, Highline, which is also part of Anthem, is in the city. And we have some that are just outside of the city boundaries as well, and that's where Barb with the private side is also involved in. And so one of the neat things about, and I've had a chance to be the passenger while Gary's been the pilot in a Trishaw, and I realized that they're not going to be going fast. 5 miles an hour when you're sitting in the Trishaw and you're not in control feels like 15 when you're heading down, because you're not in control, and what holds you back, the only thing that's holding you back is a seat belt. But there is a seat belt, so there is a safety component. But what's neat about the Mary Carter, particularly through Littleton and Englewood, is the dual trail nature of the greenway that exists. So there's an opportunity not just to use the paved paths, but we think at various points in time we can get off to the pea gravel that's there as well. So it's one of those things where we have the okay and the blessings between South Suburban and the city attorney that says, you know, vehicles can be used on the greenway. And so South Suburban, we're either going to be storing it at Mercy Nature Center or possibly eventually moving it to the Saperchi facility once that frees up. I'll put it that way. Do you want me to just take over here?
I want to go to the next slide.
Okay, that one's mine, so. You can ask us about excitement, you can ask all about data, whatever you want to know, but this is a wonderful program. It's helpful not just to the seniors, but also those folks that are the pilots in the program. Program directors at facilities have been very excited about this because it's something they can add that is relatively easy. One of the things that does happen around the scheduling that's there is first you have your volunteer pilots that enter into the calendar on when they're available. So you're not scheduling passengers until you actually have, you have pilots that are available. The amazing thing about the 166 rides that Lakewood has done is you have to recognize they started in September, mid-September, so that was during the entire winter that occurred. So that's not even the peak time when folks are going to necessarily be able to be getting out. It's typically going to be done Monday through Friday because traffic, as everyone knows, on the Greenway on the weekends gets pretty intense. So it's one of those things where we're probably going to be avoiding some of that. There's a special sunset ride that Bill wanted to arrange for someone that he knows or something like that. But a couple of the things that we're looking for is the city to provide some initial funding for the acquisition of a Trishaw and an extra battery. And there are some additional side equipment that is needed. We'd want to be in a position where we have two vehicles, and Gary can elaborate a little bit, but the reason why you have two vehicles is in case you have one break down, you can shuttle back folks to whatever the embarkation point is so they can get back to their facility, so that you have that ability to deal with this. And in addition to that, with two, you can also facilitate your training that we would be able to execute. So it's important. So we're not asking for full funding of the program. We're looking for a collaborative seating that occurs on that. The transportation and assistance might be leveraging some of the omnibus on a scheduling basis. I think Sama mentioned that in some of her notes in the program, and we've had some discussions with the city manager over that, and being to lean on the city for possibly some of that. We've talked with the city attorney relative to the waivers, not just for the passengers, but also for the pilots. But that's something that Lakewood's gone through that, but we'd also want something to be good for Littleton, so we want to make sure that we're doing that. We would hope that the city would have an interest in some linkages from the city's website via Littleton Rocks or such. Not all the folks necessarily have to come through the facilities, or they may come through some that don't have program directors that are coordinating some of the calendars. I mean, we have an assisted living facility that does not have a full-time program director that's on Broadway. So those things might be there. Bill mentioned the website, Cycling Without Age, or CWA Littleton. It parallels some of the other cities in the suffix and its orientation. That's on that front. And that's our request. and open it to questions, but we're certainly excited about it.
I do have a question, apart from what you said. Cycling is not age, but what about cycling for people who have challenges? So, physical challenges. So it would look to me that with some help, if you had physical challenges, you could get into it.
Absolutely. And my answer to that is we want to walk before we run. So we wanted to get the elderly going, and there's a bunch of other down the road that there's potential for those people. And I've been approached by them to say, hey, can we address this? Maybe it's the blind, maybe there's other, there's a bunch, not just, physical challenges. Right, there's a bunch, but I think we really want to get all the policy procedures and all that stuff worked out with just one group. And then if it really, wouldn't it be neat if we had a handful of these things in a couple of years? But I think we have to walk before we run.
And would there be opportunity perhaps for people to donate to help fund this?
Sure.
What was the question?
Can they donate?
Can she give you money?
It's a nonprofit. The Global is a nonprofit.
I mean, there are some, I suppose I would say the franchise has some restrictions, i.e. we're not going to be using this to generate revenue. We're not going to be charging folks for the rides. And so this is going to be very much a service orientation that's has some capital funding that's come from some sources, but it's then run by volunteers. And so, Gary, you want to tell them what your big salary is?
Yeah, I make within $1 or $2 of what Ken Gart makes as the czar of bicycling. I think he had his salary doubled to $2 last year by Mayor or Governor Hickenlooper. So I'm zero. And in terms of funding, what we started with the funding is I don't have a 501c3 and frankly didn't have the money or the wherewithal to jump through those hoops. Eaton had a 501c3 funding, so we used their website and their knowledge, and their third-party manager only takes like 4% of the donations. And I sent that to everybody on my race team and everybody in the Lakewood Bicycle Advisory team, and we raised about $4,000 or $5,000 fairly quickly. And at that point, Eaton's residents were saying, how soon can we sign up? And the CEO at Eaton said, Gary, you can start sleeping nights. We'll find the money within our foundation. So that was the first one. The senior management for Eaton went out of town when the invoice arrived. I took $8,000 from my savings account and sent it to them so I wouldn't miss the shipping date. And when the senior management came back, I said, I just spent $8,000. Will you reimburse me? And they said, yeah, we'll cut you the check right away. When the city of Lakewood heard that, they said, that's commitment. We're getting the second one. And then once we're up and rolling, then we can tell our own stories, not Ole's stories. I did a presentation on the Alameda Gateway, and it was hosted by Metro West Housing Solutions, which is West Denver, Lakewood's affordable housing operator. And the CEO came up after the presentation, handed me a card, and said, we need to talk. And they purchased the third one. So you get that first one, and once it's up and running and people see what happens. And so Cycling Without Age has exploded, and within the last year, they've named a captain. This started with 2 people in Copenhagen running this worldwide organization. And now there's 4 people working in that office, basically living off of donations. And we now have an attorney in New York who is the captain of Cycling Without Age USA Incorporated. And so they have a 501c3, and if there isn't somebody in Littleton that has one, we can operate through their 501c3.
Yeah. And I don't have a full answer yet, but I've already been talking to Littleton Transportation Network that has a 501c3. So we don't have that firmed up, so I don't want to say too much out of school. If not, we'll find something.
Anyway, does that help with the funding?
Carol and then Karina.
This sounds like wonderful stuff. A problem we have as a city is that we have been telling citizens that we have to have a tax increase so that we can afford to fix the roads. The tax increase meaning South Metro. And that when we get that, then we can fix the roads. And it seems like it would be very awkward for us to, on the one hand, be saying we need a tax increase to pay for basic things like fire and road repair. At the same time, we want to spend $10,000 for a tri-shop, and then we probably want to spend $20,000, really, saying you really want two of them. I would want to wait at least until we do budgeting before we commit to doing anything with a tri-shop so that we can fit it in with what are we not going to do that costs $20,000 or $10,000 so that we can do this. I think it's a great thing to do, but we're going to be financially irresponsible if we, out of the goodness of our hearts, say this sounds great, and it does. Let's buy it, when we haven't thought about what it is we aren't going to buy, that we may have committed to buy already, that may be critically important. If we're down to we can't afford to fix streets unless we get a tax increase, when that's what we've been saying, then we probably shouldn't be doing this without going through budgeting consideration about what the trade-off is.
Mark, do you want to talk about, I asked Mark if we could, how we would fund this, so we have some funds.
We looked at a couple of different alternatives here. We did look at Conservation Trust, we did look at open space, but neither ones of those kind of funding options really would be appropriate for this particular use. Because of the level of expenditure, it'd have to be capitalized, so it would be the city's capital project fund. Right now, the fund balance, I think the staff report talks about 10 million, maybe 9 million, I guess. But again, we've been talking in terms of kind of a 5-year plan. Later on in June, we'll talk more detail about exactly what that looks like as an update. But the fund balance as of the end of the year is roughly 9 million in the capital project fund. So that would be the appropriate place if you're going to do this, where it would come from.
Let me just add a little bit to that. The reason why we're coming to the city for the seed dollars is to be able to get on the list for ordering these. Sometimes they take as long as 6 months or so for delivery, and Gary's gone through that experience. Sometimes they make some shippings without commitments on delivery, but the sooner we can actually get moving toward this would be when we could actually initiate some of the programs. So, I'm sorry, Karina.
So I support what Carol is saying as far as looking at this in a greater scope of where our budgets are and where we're investing our money, what types of things we're investing our money. And I really look at this as, kind of part of the omnibus program. I mean, if you take out omnibuses on wheels and it's a bus, it's about getting our older community access to different things. This is just another vehicle to do that. So to me, it is in the scope of a service we already are investing in and supporting, and I believe want to continue to do. So I think it does fit our community values. So I love it from that perspective. That is, it's part of our core, it's part of who we are in Littleton. But I do think, again, because our exercise that we're especially going through this year with priority-based budgeting, we do have to go through that diligence. I don't think I don't want to say it's not about the 10,000 versus 9 million, but it's just, let's make sure we're doing the right things and we have a criteria, because in doing that, then you can get that full support. This fits Littleton. It's not just about whether it's 10,000, 5,000, or 20,000. It's the fit for Littleton, and it can have that longevity. a question that I have is, when does this truly is, you're asking for it as seed money. And so is the intent and the model that after seed money, you really can self-sustain? Or do you feel that there will always be a need of a municipality contribution?
Karina, at least based on Lakewood's experience, is once we get the program going, donations have come in and you get support. We're looking and we're doing this in parallel with the private side, so we can basically get to that point where we have 2 to start with. So we're only asking the city for 1 at this point in time, but we know we need 2 to actually get the program initiated. And so we're working hard in both fronts, and that's why we're coming to the city on an excited basis to say, hey, we'd like to get this going. And we have volunteers and some folks that are related to some folks around this table have also expressed interest in being pilots already. So when Gary talks about pasting it, there's others that are out there that are anxious to support something like this with their volunteer efforts.
So it really is seed money?
Yes.
And that's the model and the intent. And have you approached South Metro Chamber because they allow you to pitch for funds?
We have a list of folks to approach. We'd like to get the facilities behind us first, because they're the ones that are going to be immediately benefiting, or at least their residents are going to be immediately benefiting, but there's a longer list of other folks that we can go. But we don't want to necessarily stop at 2, but 2 is what gets us started.
Jerry?
Peggy, were you? I thought you raised your hand, but okay, cool.
Jerry, then Pat.
Thank you. So you don't have a 501c3, is that right? What I heard? Correct. Okay, you don't. So you don't have an executive director at this point. No organizational address. You don't. Do you have a total budget yet?
Well, we know what it's going to take to acquire the facilities. We know the commitment that we have on maintenance of the vehicles and the additional supply. So we do know what that's going to be, and we have a website that's been initiated, Jerry.
So. And how many Littleton residents, you didn't do any Littleton residents last year, but how many do you anticipate you would do this first year?
Well, if we look at it, having somewhere in the neighborhood of 400 rides in the first year of operation, 12 months would be something that would parallel what Lakewood has done already.
So how many?
400 rides. So does that sound reasonable?
So and the rickshaw, I think of it as a rickshaw, I'm sorry. The Trishaw. Where will you said the Trishaw will be stored down at Carson Center somewhere?
Or in the discussions with South Suburban, they've either indicated at Carson or at the Superchi.
Now, I don't know if this is for Sam or for Mark, then, so the omnibus is key to this working, because the omnibus is going to be transporting people.
Omnibus is what? I'm sorry?
Going to be transporting people. That's part of the plan. It's part of the plan.
Some of the facilities have their own transportation as well. It's not just the omnibus, but the omnibus would be able to allow us to go to some of the facilities that don't have their own transportation vehicles.
So with the omnibus then, does the omnibus, I mean, what is the schedule demand right now? I mean, do they have available time right now where they could be available, or because they're just sitting around doing nothing, not being scheduled? I mean, what is the demand on the omnibus?
Well, I think it's when we've talked with the city clerk and certain staff to kind of manage this. Our forecast is, again, based on some of the facilities having their own transportation, we believe that it's likely to be easily scheduled. It's an on-call system, so depending on how the website is set up and how they register for a ride, if we're available, great. If we're not, well, we're not. But I think our forecast is that it's probably manageable here for the first couple of years. Again, this is just our estimate. Over time, obviously, we'd have to keep track of that and report back the progress of that.
I guess a part of what you were both touching on is that the budget season is coming, and that during the last budget process, we had over 30 applications, or about 30 applications, something like that. All of them worthwhile. Yeah, this sounds fantastic. What a blast to have the wind blasting into your face like that. I think that'd be truly be cool. But if there were 30 applications, there were 30 worthy nonprofits set up already with 501c3s, that whole bit there. And it would be nice to fund every one of them. But the bottom line is we did not fund every one of them. We ended up, while we wanted to, but we just didn't. We had over $550,000 in requests. We ended up funding $86,000 of the citizens' money. This is the citizens' money. This just isn't found money that the city has. This is citizens' money that we need to be responsible for, of course. And as you had mentioned, that we have gone out and asked the citizens to keep excess tax money for the roads, because that is our huge thing. The priority-based budgeting is going to be a huge thing, I think, this coming year. And I'm looking forward to it to some degree. The city, besides the nonprofits that we ended up funding 16 of the 30 nonprofits, and that came to about $86,000, a little more. We also did 4 nonprofits where we did sponsorships, such as city staff was provided, public works was provided, police were provided, all at no charge. This too would be another no charge strain on us. The omnibus and arranging the omnibus and things like that, we wouldn't be getting any fees for that. The 8 nonprofits that didn't receive any funding included the Freedom Service Dogs, an incredible worthy nonprofit. Most of the nonprofits that we did fund, I was just going through the applications, I pulled them out just last night. Most of them are in Littleton, the city of Littleton. And they're set up, they've been around a while, they have a history. Not all of them are in Littleton, some are in Centennial. This request is about adding about 10% to what we've already budgeted of the $86,000, adding it to the budget for donations. Let's see. What I'd like to see, and Phil's very familiar with this process, is see to come back with an application, just like we required all the other 30 or so folks, nonprofits, come back. Get that get that 501c3 together. Get these things together so that when we're giving away the citizens' money, it's going to something that is set up with the intent of continuing to grow instead of a hope and a prayer. And I hope you guys continue. That's for doggone sure. But I really prefer to see that before we start giving away money to nonprofits, that they go through the steps that we have in place. They're established. Everybody that we did give money to filled out the application, submitted it to the city clerk, who reviews it. And if it meets the certain measures, it comes to the city council, where we will be haggling about this soon here, come September or October, whatever it is. Once you have that 501c3, you can accept donations. I mean, if citizens really like this, they're going to be given money for it. And not everybody who will utilize it probably will have the funds to donate, but there's going to be a lot of other people that will be donating, including citizens of Littleton. But I would like to see you guys come back with that application so that we can process it just like we do all other donations. Just making a special favor to take something out of capital I'm not comfortable with, especially when it's involving a recently former city council member. It's kind of like we're kind of doing something here that I'm not comfortable with. So it's a great organization. It sounds wonderful. I went online and read about it a lot today. So I hope we can pull this off with your application, because the city is very generous with the citizens' money. Please come back with an application.
You're running 2 bikes right now, or just the 1 bike?
We've got 2 up and running, and the 3rd one arrived 2 weeks ago, and Metro West Housing Solutions at their Creekside apartment will start a soft rollout on May 22nd. Yep. And all 3 of our Tri-Shaws will be supporting various Lakewood city events. Lakewood's rolling out their 40 West Arts line as part of the West Colfax Corridor Improvement Association, and they've asked that all 3 Trishaws be there to participate in that. So it's kind of a partnership between the nonprofits, the private sector, and the city of Lakewood. So,
what's your average ride time, distance, or time?
what we're doing out of Eaton, our most popular destination is Belmar Park, and the Trishaws start at Eaton, and it's about 2 miles over to Belmar Park. Most of that is on quiet side roads. Then we get into the park itself, and we're on the paved parks. So our situation is a little different than Littleton. We don't have the Mary Carter Greenway supporting us. What we've done there is set up morning rides from 9:30 to 11:30 and 12:30 to 2:30 with the thought of avoiding rush hour. And since there's a meal program at Eaton, we didn't want the residents to miss the meal. So what we said is a maximum of a 2-hour length, and weather and fatigue, the residents tell us we're ready to go back.
$10,000, I know you know this better than I do, but I do a little cycling. Seems really expensive to me. Have you looked at, and I know this is an electric bike, have you looked at what they use downtown during the Rockies game? Can we make that an alternative for those people that want to be a pilot that says, I don't need if you're riding the plaque, there's no hills there. I mean, you can get through that pretty easily.
First of all, the pedicabs, they're too big. They won't fit on the Mary Carter Greenway or anywhere else.
Okay.
That's number one. Number two, those are electric vehicles.
Okay.
And number three, I think they're probably more expensive than the Trishaw, other than the fact that these have to be shipped from Copenhagen.
Yeah.
We have also looked extensively, and Ole and Casella and Copenhagen has looked for a North American manufacturer. To build that first prototype is going to be way over $10,000.
Yeah.
And most of the manufacturers, Main Street pedicabs up in Broomfield has been approached. They said, we won't build a front passenger vehicle.
Gotcha.
They supply them from all over.
And the point is so you can have a conversation versus because you can't talk.
Oh, I got you. Yeah, I guess I didn't think. And then, what have you raised so far? You mentioned the donations you've been getting. How has that been going? Do you have any numbers behind that?
Yeah, we raised the $8,000 for the purchase of that first one through the donations, and $5,000 were my personal contacts.
Okay. Then you mentioned the liability piece of it. Is that what's something like that cost per pilot?
There's a waiver that's done.
Just a waiver.
Yes. We have looked at that, and I don't see any significant issues.
Okay.
In having the necessary in place.
Okay. That's all I have.
Peggy?
Yeah, I've got a few things. So how long is the typical ride in time?
Maximum is 2 hours.
Max? Okay.
Could be an hour, could be 90 minutes.
And would it be possible to ask for donations from riders for the first year?
That would not be with the guidelines of Cycling Without Age. One of the guidelines is that a resident never pays for a ride, and the pilots never.
I didn't say pay. I
Okay,
said
but
suggest.
we don't ask for donation from them. We have had children want to make a contribution so that their parents could participate, but we don't solicit that.
Okay. Then grants?
Lakewood used some grant money for their purchase. I don't know the specifics.
Okay.
Lakewood took care of that.
Maybe we find out what grants we might apply for.
We need a grant writer. You should be our grant writer. I'll do a new job.
Don't distract her, Pat.
I know. I'm just thinking.
I'm
Turn me
thinking
down here.
this
We
is
gotta find
really
her a
good.
job.
I'm trying to figure out how we can facilitate doing this, recognizing what people have said about the city's budgetary challenge. And it would seem to me possibly we could put something in the Littleton report about this. We already have what we're doing now on the TV, maybe having something else that would encourage donations and see, like, here, we want to raise this much in 3 months or something, just to see we could do. We might even have someone willing to match donations, or 2 or 3 people together would match donations that would help fund the first one or something. I'm just trying to, find some way that we could facilitate this without tapping the city's money. So maybe put some thought, Bill, maybe you and Jim and I could have coffee and brainstorm some other things.
Well, Scott Harris, correct? Yeah. That might be a resource.
Yeah, right. I think there's, in the community, there will, once we talk to you guys about this first, once the word's out in the community, Jerry, what you said with the nonprofit, and I think this will have legs, I really do, and I think the community will get behind. I feel pretty confident, just from the feedback, just in my sphere, that the positive, it's there, and we just have to publicize it and get it going.
Yeah, I think this sounds like a great idea, and it, like Karina said, fits within the values of our city. But I'm with Jerry. It seems like the foundation really isn't there. I mean, it sounds like we're either granting to a nonprofit organization or we're starting a new city program, but that's not clearly defined here. So if it's a grant to a nonprofit organization, let's make it a grant to a nonprofit organization to do that. If it's a city program, then we can take that on. Yeah, if you don't have the 501c3 or 6 or whatever yet, I mean, do you have the capacity for having more than 3 bikes? You talked to South Suburban about maybe keeping a bike somewhere, but if you want to grow it, what's the capacity, what's the personnel capacity too? If it's all just volunteer based, who's to say in 9 months the volunteers are just like, I don't have time anymore, and did the city just buy a $10,000 bike that's not going to get used because there's no structure or organization there to support that continually? I mean, I don't think that'll happen, but without that being set up.
Valid points.
All I can point to is the success that they've had on a worldwide basis. This program continues to grow, and the heart and soul of it is the volunteers. And I envision doing some hard recruiting in Lakewood for volunteers. So far, I haven't had to. 21 people have come to me and said, I want to be involved. And I expect that after what Channel 4 and Channel 7 did for us, that more people will be coming. The City of Lakewood has made their recreational facilities available, and they say, you tell us when you want to hold a class to attract more volunteers. So I still have that option out in front of me. But the cycling community steps up big time for stuff like this. That's my experience. I don't expect to see the volunteers disappear.
And I'm glad to hear you talking about reaching out to the private side. And I think this would be a great thing for a coalition of assisted living homes to say, hey, this is something that would benefit our residents. Let's say there's 10 of them in the area. They all chip in $1,000. I mean, they could buy it and have this set up themselves. I mean, this seems like a great thing for South Suburban to do as well, as to benefit their broader base. I don't know if B-Cycle or Line Bike, if you've talked to them about, hey, this would be a great addition to your program and not necessarily fit exactly with a rental, but it would be a great community outreach for them to advertise and sponsor those. And you might be able to get thousands of dollars there. I know you mentioned, Peggy mentioned people that aren't able to ride a bike, and I heard you say, the Center for the Blind does have an iCycle program. So have you reached out to them to say, hey, maybe we could work?
Not yet.
Okay.
We wanted to, there's a lot of them.
Sounds like you got a new board member here.
And then the $10,000 for something that might be used. I mean, when you said 400 times a year, that's comparing it to, you're going off Lakewood's number, but Lakewood's 4 times the size of Littleton too. And so I don't know if we're going to,
It's true in population, but not as far as facilities and Proximus, and the fact that based on the locations we'd be embarking from, we don't have to go on a lightly traveled street. We immediately have access to the Greenway, and that's one of the things. And quite honestly, in approaching you here, we know the city already has its hands in senior facilities, and so it wasn't a large extension in coming to you and saying, hey, based on what you do in conjunction with the Housing Authority, what you do in other spaces, you're already present as the city in some of this. So, Pat, I love your ideas because it's of value to the facilities. We've spoken to some of the program directors. They'd love to have it. And here we're looking for a seed to some of that, to say, hey, we've got a commitment, and we know that it's going to be easy to pull up on that second once we get the first, and that's why we're here.
Then one last thing, I know that Cycling Without Age is a global group, it's a nonprofit. They have their own fundraiser. They have an Indiegogo website raising funds, but I know they're not the only place to buy a tri-shot. I know you said you looked for a U.S. manufacturer, but if you look to Asia, these things are all over Asia. They may not be electric, but there's lots of opportunities there too. I don't know if this is the only option to purchase.
I can't find one.
Are we obligated to?
Well, first of all, yeah, you are obligated to buy one of the approved tri-shots from Cycling Without Age.
Why?
Well, that's what they require.
For what though? If you want to start just a bicycling for elderly.
Let me get back to the first one. I'm the affiliate in Lakewood, okay? And this is the agreement that they asked me to abide by. I combed the internet. There is not a product like this made in North America. We have approached some frame builders. Colorado's got a ton of frame builders. They're not interested because they have a business model that's working for them. They've got all the demand that they can supply.
Madam Mayor, it's 8:15 already.
And
Can we wrap
then,
this up?
Yeah, we're nearly done.
getting back to the electric, the capacity is 500 pounds. You're not going to pedal those without the electric assist. So, Ole is favorable to finding a North American manufacturer, but with his resources, he hasn't found it. I can't find it. Bill has approached some frame builders. One said, I'll build you the frame, but you're going to have to source everything else.
Do you know how many bikes are in the U.S. right now?
I think there's 44 chapters, and Wisconsin has the most chapters of, I can't tell you how many bikes are in each chapter. 3 of the chapters in Colorado have just started the fundraising, and they don't have a bike yet.
Do you have a question?
No, I was saying it's 8:15. Could we wrap this up? Because the night is, we're
Well,
only
everybody had quite a few
2.
questions, so we only have one item left. Everyone had quite a few questions, so.
But it's a steep item.
I'm going to be quick. If you all cooperate.
So I don't have as much angst over this as my fellow council members. I also don't think that we need to solve a business scenario for you guys. This is your business. This is what you do. You are volunteers. There's no money being made. I don't have an angst about a 501c3. I think that this, in my mind, I think that this was and is a amenity that we can add to the experience in Littleton, and I think it's inexpensive. I understand the budget. I don't think it would be wise of us in terms of just willy-nilly. We need to be more contemplative about this, and I would like to put it through our budget process. I don't agree with Jerry that it should go through the budget that council has. It's a small amount. This is a larger ask. This has a different
intention, I think. So I would not support that. I think it dies on that list. But I think it would be something that if council's interested in at least having Mark put it in the budget, work it in our priority based and see how that washes out. And if it comes out that we have identified it, that it is a funding priority, then, then that it goes through the system clean. The unfortunate thing is that isn't until September, is ratified until October, and so you would not be able to make a quick action on this in order to get a bike out here sooner. So I think that's where we're at. Council, are you okay with having it put into the budget process, the budget hopper, and see where it lands?
I am absolutely not okay with that. This needs to go through the nonprofit, just as we do. I'm a member of a nonprofit. We contribute money to nonprofits, which I hope you guys will become. And if they don't have a 501c3, you don't give them money because it's a tax law that you have to abide by. For the city, you said it's not much money, then you go ahead and give the money. This is you're the one that said it, not me. This is a lot of money. I don't care. $10,000 is a lot of money. I would love for these guys to come back with an application just as we require other nonprofits to do. And that is what we should do, is follow our normal agenda, not a formal council member coming back and saying, let's do this differently and give his, that is my opinion on how we should do it.
We appreciate you guys being here. Appreciate your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item.
Yes, you want to go ahead or you want to break?
Does anybody need a break? Mark.
This one. Second reading, the council had asked that we bring back the topic of commercial mascot and rotating sign options. And so that's the only thing we have for you tonight. There may be other issues you may have about signs, but we're not focused on that. We'll focus just on this one item. Now, the background was, as I mentioned, council said bring this back. Now, we looked at some approaches, and we looked at what some other cities do. For example, Centennial has a code very similar to ours. They prohibit mascots, human, robotic rotating signs, and electronic rotating signs. If you compare that to Frederick, they allow commercial mascots, robotic signs, but they prohibit rotating signs. Aurora allows everything. Aurora, anything goes. So, there is no right or wrong answer here. This is truly a policy call for how you view the community and what you think is appropriate. So we get down to the 5 options. Option 1, we could be like Frederick and just prohibit rotating electronic signs and everything else would be legal. 2, we could be more like Centennial, which would be to prohibit rotating electronic signs, commercial mascots, sign twirlers, but we would allow them on private property. They'd only be prohibited on the right-of-way. Or 3, we could basically prohibit it all on both private or public property. And that would also be consistent with 4. And then finally, 5, we could be like Aurora and simply not have anything in the code. Now, keep in mind, we do have some other provisions elsewhere in the code that prohibit blocking the public right-of-way. So you cannot block the public sidewalk whether you're holding a sign or any other type of conduct, because it is an ADA and Americans with Disabilities Act accessible facility. And you could even come up with a combination of 1, 2, and 3, for example, or any part thereof. So what we're looking from you tonight is, we're not going to write the ordinance here. We're looking for some very clear guidance from you as to what you think we should do to address this. Based on that, I will work with Jocelyn, we'll prepare something for first read, and then we'll come back to you. So, with that, we're here.
I think you should change electronic to electric, because I don't think we're talking about electronic signs.
Okay.
Is that a possibility?
Well, yes, we can do that. I mean, I think the reason that we use electronic is that technically that is the nomenclature they're using in the sign industry, but...
Is it?
It is. But we can certainly...
I can see where, like a rotating sign like that Andy's ice cream thing may very well not be electronic, but it certainly is electric.
Okay, I'll look into that.
Okay. Enough of the words. No more of that.
That's the one thing I was going to ask is what's the definition of a rotating electronic sign? Because is it? I mean, I'm thinking the rotating widget, in the window or on, on the. I'm fine with a rotating widget, or like a barber. Would a barber thing be disallowed because it's rotating? I don't think that should be necessarily outlawed, but definitely the. Simulate a live person or animal that are placed in the right of way. I think that's. I'm not a big fan of those. So I would leaning towards somewhere in the 1, 2, and 3.
Okay.
I'm not terribly opposed to someone holding a sign, but the mechanical.
But not at an intersection.
Yeah.
Karina.
One of the things that I personally got tripped up over during our meeting was that what was currently prohibited before in our code was the rotating signs. So that's all it said. And what we were adding is further items that are of similar intent and placement, I guess, on a street or a sidewalk, etc., which was a mascot. So it could be a rotating sign, it could be a mascot. Regardless of which one it was, they were standing on a corner or somewhere. And so I think one thing that I want to ask for is to ensure that when we're, that we're clean and what we're putting in a definition is also somewhere else. And in this particular case, we actually didn't have rotating signs, I think, in the definition. So that's just more of a cleanup. When I look at this, I'm looking at whether you call it electronic sign, a mascot, etc. To me, they are all temporary signs. They're intended to be temporary signs. And from that vantage point, I actually look at them and say, if that is the case, there's just another form of a temporary sign, I would be supportive of putting the same ordinance that we have in place for other temporary signs. It's by permit. It's limited in how often and how long they can be out there. So to me, this is just another form of temporary signage. And that's what I would support.
Pat and Carol.
Where I struggle is coming down Main Street and seeing, every shop out there with people twirling the sign. Not that that will happen, but if we change this too much, that could potentially be the case. I think we got to be really careful as to what we allow back into our rules, because we haven't had this in the past. And other than I've gotten zero pushback from anybody in the community except for the one gentleman that spoke last week. So I'm okay with sticking with our original our original rules on all the signage.
The original was number 4, right?
Number 4, yeah.
Okay.
Carol?
Addressing Kyle's thing about what's the problem with a rotating sign, though you said you're in favor of not having rotating electric signs with number 4.
I said the ones that simulate a live person or animal.
Oh.
You've seen they have the fake person out there that's moving the sign.
Oh, yeah.
That.
The robot.
The robot, yeah.
Yeah.
But a widget in the window or right outside that is just moving around. That's
within the establishment.
In the establishment or on the building, I'm fine with those. Yeah.
I have a problem with again, picking on Andy's ice cream. They have a huge ice cream cone that to me is really distracting to traffic. And it was put there to be an eye catcher, and it is. So there's a lot going on at that intersection.
This doesn't address that. This isn't that.
Well, for future.
Rotating electric sign
This is the question. This does
Am
not
I
address
talking?
that. Sorry. I'm just trying to get clarification. I'm sorry. I'm looking for clarification on that.
Okay, we'll look for clarification next. So the way that, and I could be wrong, and we need clarification, what I see as a rotating electric sign is something that is electrically powered, so it constantly turns. There's nobody there, and it goes and it goes and it goes, and if it is bright, and it probably is, and colorful, it's designed to catch somebody's eye, and it's really distracting to traffic, and so that's the problem. That's why I would not want to have those. And the other thing was...
why you didn't want to have the rotating electronic sign?
Well, I started out saying that I'm not... If we can include electric in there along with the electric, because I can see... I'm an electrical person. I come from electric. I can see where someone says, my electric sign is not electronic.
No, and we can deal with that in the drafting. So I think what I hear you saying, Councilmember Fay, is your concern is a large, continually rotating item on top of a building or whatever that's designed to attract business.
Or in front of a building, or inside the building in glass, so that it's visible from the outside, and we've dealt with that.
Right. I think we've dealt with that in another section, but I hear what you're saying.
Yes.
You're also saying just rotating in general.
Kyle?
To kind of use the Andes or a Barber poll, I had emailed a question about this, not necessarily pertaining to the rotating signs, but would it be art? Would the ice cream cone, could you consider consider it as just an piece of art. It's not necessarily a sign. Yes, it's tied to the business, but if there's something, not art. Anything. The tractor on Littleton Boulevard. Let's say you have an art gallery and there's a piece of art.
Yeah, but this isn't it.
Just use your imagination that we're in a hypothetical world that what is, if it's rotating, just because ban all rotation in Littleton?
I don't think that's the question.
It says a rotating sign.
The question here would really be that if the ice cream cone or any item is rotating and sufficiently in its design to advertise the business from the street, then it's a sign. If it's just, we're not going to get into looking at everything that rotates. The key from, I think, a planner standpoint and certainly from a lawyer standpoint is I'm going to look at, is this designed to advertise in this business from the street? So you as a motorist driving by go, oh, there's a custard shop. I need to go in and get some custard. If that's the case, if it's designed to attract you and advertise that business from the street, it's a sign. If it's just an ice cream cone that's on the outside of the building and maybe the building has an ice cream cone motif, that may be different. But what we're looking at is it designed to attract people from the street and advertise that business?
Can I get clarification on my question regarding, so the way it was written before any of the changes, it said rotating signs? What did it say?
Councilmember, all right, members of the council, what it said was we had sort of, it wasn't a conflict, it was just kind of an oddity. In the code before, commercial mascot was defined, but nowhere referenced in the code. Commercial mascot was defined as a person or animal constructed, costume, or decorated to function as a commercial advertising device, and it includes sign twirlers, sign clouds, human sandwich boards, persons or animals holding signs, displaying commercial speech. However, when you then went to the code itself did not mention the word commercial mascot at all. It says the following signs shall not be permitted in any zone district: rotating signs, portable signs, sandwich board signs, but nowhere did it actually use the term commercial mascot.
So what I'm asking is actually about rotating signs. When I was reading this, I looked at rotating signs as like sign twirlers. But now I'm hearing a different definition of rotating sign. So I'm just trying to get clarity of what is a rotating sign.
A rotating sign, it could be a sign twirler, it could be a robotic sign, it could be a sign like there are some businesses that we use an electronic rotating sign that continually rotates in a circle.
So the rotating sign that continuously go into a circle like a barber shop thing, is that considered a rotating sign?
That would not be considered. The barber pole that has the rotating thing, that would not fall under the definition that we currently have.
Is the Andy's ice cream considered a rotating sign?
The ice cream cone?
Is that considered a rotating sign?
I think that's going to depend, and the key on that would be is it designed to be visible from the street and attract people to the business? Now, I suppose you could have a small ice cream cone inside a window, and it would not be designed to attract people in the business. But if it's on top of the business and it's designed to attract people in the business, and this is where sign codes get really complicated. But what our goal here would be is that if council can give us some direction on options, then we can bring back something even to a study session of first read. But I would tell you from my standpoint as your lawyer, I would be concerned about adopting the Aurora option, because then you will be giving up all control. Anything goes. And if council's fine with that, that's fine. But it means that we won't be enforcing things like sign twirlers and that. So,
okay, so my position.
May I answer also? I would add that the code amendments that were brought forward, there's two pieces that you would look at for the Andes. One is about the rotating sign piece that we're talking about right now. The second one is about, we put in there prohibited when it's enclosed and the sole purpose of it is to advertise or rotate some version of an icon that brings you, or that attracts you to that business. So there's two sections that we added into the code today that would not allow Andy. So it wouldn't just be looking at it from this rotating piece. It also adds I can't remember exactly what it says, but it says
That
something
when it's
about
inside,
when it's inside, and the only purpose of it is to
I guess,
advertise.
like I said, when I was reading this, to me, this was alluding to twirlers and things like that. So what's important to me is, in this particular case, is to distinguish what is temporary versus permanent. So when we talk about the Andy signs or anything else, those are much more permanent features versus mascots, et cetera, are temporary in nature. So I think what we're bringing forward, it's important to distinguish, to have that distinguishment of temporary versus permanent structures.
And I think that's certainly something we can address, because obviously if you have an electronic rotating sign that's on a pedestal or whatever, that's a permanent sign. Versus a sign twirler, it certainly would be a reasonable time, place, and manner type restriction to say you have to get a permit for a specified period of time.
And the second piece that I would like us to consider is Pat's point. I believe the intent of a special permit is to look at various criteria, which would be how many signs are out there right now? Do we have, 5 in one corner? So I would like to see either language or assurance of a process that's in place that ensures that all of a sudden we don't have 10 different temporary signs at any one point in time on one corner of Littleton. And where I think things like twirlers or mascots support businesses, it kind of serves the same purposes as a sandwich board is serving downtown, but you can't put a sandwich board on Broadway, right? That doesn't work. But we still have small businesses on Broadway.
Jerry?
A couple things, and it's sort of along the line of what you're talking about, like a lot of little signs somewhere. I can't remember what it was the other day, but maybe it was real estate or something, but I turned around a corner, and there must have been 20 little signs going everywhere. So how does that fit into this right now?
It doesn't fit into the particular small conversation right now of mascots and sign twirling.
So is that going to be addressed?
It is addressed. Currently in the code right now, those are temporary signs. They can only be up for a limited period, and they have to.
So it's allowable. Okay.
Well, that may be too many.
That may be too many.
Follow up online.
Or through the right of way.
So on the barber pole versus Andy's ice cream cone, I drive by, I say, and Andy say, hey, I get an ice cream cone or whatever it is. And then, or I could use a haircut. I mean, isn't that advertising?
I think the difference between those two, if you look at the Andy's ice cream cone, it's actually prohibited by the code as adopted, because it now prohibits indoor signs which are designed to simply advertise the business from the street, and we can deal with it that way. Frankly, the barber pole, and usually it's on the outside, and sometimes it's part of a sign. It will be just painted on the sign, other times it's not. We'll have to look at, but I think
it's a traditional sign.
To your point, regardless of where they are, they're both rotating signs. And, yes, because it is inside and above.
Meant to advertise. Here we are.
Both evoke a response from a consumer of what is there. So
I don't have more questions. So then on the sign twirler, what if they're not actually twirling? They're just
the static sign.
We would address basically whether you're twirling, holding the sign. We would make sure that we address it.
Okay. So then last but not least, I guess when I'm thinking of sign twirlers, many sign twirlers, maybe not all, are special need people that they get jobs. I know that it's one of the things they're able to get, whether it's for tax time or other things. So I just want to bear in mind as we do this, if we were to eliminate sign twirlers, we could be taking away a job from somebody that
We don't have them now.
that really needs it.
So we don't have them now, so we're not
No,
eliminating.
if we were to take away, I mean, we do have sign twirlers, I see sign twirlers.
Not in Littleton, according to the code we should.
They're out there.
They are out there. I won't say, Woodlawn. Don't say Woodlawn.
Comment, just, and then the enforcement of that, you know, I mean, I think our people, there's a lot better things for our people to be doing out there than enforcing twirlers out there. So again, I think by eliminating it, it's, there's no code, you know, leave the code as approved. That's, again, my.
Or eliminate it and don't enforce it. I mean,
So I'm wondering why we're concerned. I'm being a little facetious, not totally. Why are we concerned? Is this in some way, these issues in some way disturbing somebody? I mean, in some way? I mean, if somebody's, shining a light that's blinding somebody, that's an issue. If somebody has it'd be interesting, whether a sign makes noise, whether the noise is, because one of these days somebody's going to have a noise sign, but anyway. So, what is it that we're trying to do here? And is it connected with the image of the city? And if that's so, what is the image that we're trying to create or rein in or whatever? And then the whole issue of temporary signs and what they might be allowed to do. Because we know we've had the signs that go with fundraisers from schools and so forth. So I'm struggling at what we're trying to achieve.
Carol? Probably my primary concern with things like sign twirlers is what happens at intersections. And we have some intersections that are really intense. One of them, for example, at County Line and Broadway, where there have been a lot of accidents, and that's a prime place for sign twirlers. And so you have
private property too. Right.
Well, no, on the right of way.
Yeah, that too. Yeah.
So the right-of-way goes a little in from the sidewalk, a foot or 6 feet for commercial property there. And there could be 2 or 3 sign twirlers out there tossing them up in the air and stuff like that. So people are trying to negotiate all those lanes of traffic and figure out how they're going to turn. And
those lanes that don't line up.
And the lanes that don't line up and the construction. And so addressing your question, what's the problem? For me, the problem is distraction. It also is litter and clutter. It makes a mess of something that doesn't need to be a mess.
So the first one is a safety issue. When you say distraction, so things that certainly is a valid.
And the same thing with ongoing, like I've said before, the rotating signs and distraction. There are so many distractions already. So Andy's example there is Broadway and Ridge, another really busy intersection.
Karina.
I would ask, or I expect, that our permitting process is there, in fact, to protect against, risk to public safety, et cetera. That's why a permit, and I believe that is some of the criteria in the special permitting of where it's located, that it can't obstruct the view, it can't create a safety hazard. So a permit process is intended to ensure that we don't create an unsafe environment.
Mayor, if I might suggest help get to a consensus here.
Thought you would give us 5 options.
What I would suggest is first, let's look at things on the public right of way. My sense of this is that there is a concern about sign twirlers, robotic signs on the public right of way and the problems that those could create. So we can address first the right of way, and then the question I would have for council is, do you want to regulate sign twirlers, robotic signs on private property? And that could be done through like sign permit for, we have, much like other temporary signs where you can get a special permit, we could deal with those on private property through the special permit process.
Like a shopping center you're talking about?
Yes, like, where you can do it, you have to get a special permit. You couldn't do the Statue of Liberty year round. You could do it for 120 days. You might start on January 1 and come April 30th, you're done. But does that approach work for council?
That works for me.
If that works for council, then what we're going to do is Jocelyn and I will prepare a first draft, but I'm just going to sort of circulate it out to you prior to putting anything on the agenda. And by all means, feel free to comment. And if that approach works, Mayor, then...
Mayor, I'm sorry, I have one question though. I'm not clear about where council's coming from on a rotating mechanical sign, whether or not on private property, whether or not you want that to be allowed, yes or no?
I'm okay.
I'm okay with it.
If the whole thing with the rotating is because of Andy's, is that why we're
Well,
worried
you
about
could have
it?
other rotating types of mechanical signs. What my suggestion might be...
Sonic Burger is another one that some places does, the big,
Why don't we just treat it as a covered sign that you have to get a sign permit for, and you just have to come in and we'll deal with it as part of the sign package?
My concern with that is a larger concern, and that is ensuring that our night skies ordinance is not being violated. The brightness,
The light pollution. Yep.
because we have that ordinance, and I think technically that one that initially Carol was raised, I think that probably is violating the night skies ordinance.
We would normally evaluate that as part of the sign package when it comes in. We will evaluate with the illumination in terms of any of the city code.
Rena?
I'm with Mark here on the rotating. I don't understand. If a sign is a sign, whether it's flat, turning, but if a sign is defined by your code as a sign, which is intended to advertise, then all of the restrictions that apply to it on size and illumination, etc. So I don't understand the significance of whether it's rotating or not. So I don't know that language is necessary here. If it's defined as a sign, advertisement, then it has to abide by.
Councilman Bell, members of the council, I think that's a very valid point. I think some cities like Centennial, for whatever reason, have this thing that rotating signs, they've decided that's what they want to prohibit. What my suggestion is, I would recommend that we just craft that and that just becomes something you have to get a sign permit for. And when that business comes in, we will evaluate it as to whether it meets the overall requirements of the code, illumination and safety. If it's a certain level, or it may have to have a building permit because it may structurally require that. But we'll evaluate it from that context, and we just deal with it through the sign permitting process.
Everybody okay?
Yep.
Thank you.
Steve.
Thank you. The manager.
See, I just had a couple of things, and one of which here, I think, was a conversation with the mayor here after our last council meeting, and I think it's trying to come up with a process here so that we respond to questions raised by citizens during public comment at a regular meeting. And I think, maybe speaking for the mayor a little bit here, I think we've talked in terms of, at the conclusion of that public comment, the mayor turning to either myself or the city attorney, depending on what the issue might be, and asking staff to prepare some response back to council in some form. My suggestion is that you leave it up to myself and the city attorney to decide exactly what that response may be. I think in a couple of cases, I think we're already prepared to give you kind of a written comment back to the council on that. In some cases, it could be, quite honestly, as simple as a phone call from staff to the citizen, just trying to understand the detail or responding in that form. But I think the bottom line is we'd like to find a way here to consistently respond to the citizens after they make public comment. So that's kind of one issue.
I appreciate that, and that is something that you're already doing. I mean, citizens are contacting us through email, and you guys are providing a response. This is just another way that citizens are contacting us in a public forum and asking us a question, so we should definitely extend that same courtesy of providing a response to them. And so I think it's in line with kind of something that you're already doing.
But I don't think we should engage that during council. That would swallow the whole.
And the intention really of me making a comment to staff is so that the citizens understand that they can expect that.
That to be heard, and yeah, that's great.
And I think you're right. Some are as simple as a phone call, but there's others that need to be responded publicly.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's your judgment call.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, we'll try this, but we would like to have a consistent approach in responding to citizens. The other thing I just want to note here is that on the tentative council calendar, if I made a comment last Friday in my notes that looked like the potential for the June 5th meeting was really scheduled originally as a regular meeting, but we also tagged on here about a month ago a study session. Well, today it looks like we don't need the regular meeting, we need the study session. So I'm going to be suggesting at council's next meeting here on May 15th that you formally cancel the regular meeting, but schedule and hold the study session. We just simply don't have any business for the regular meeting. Any questions or comments on that?
So will the agenda go out on Thursday as a study session?
Yes.
The public announcement would go out as a study session?
And council has to formally cancel that regular meeting.
So we'll cancel it next week at a regular meeting.
All right. Study session, though. Study session, though.
Wouldn't we want to have an opportunity to have public comment in case the public has something they want to comment on? Like with the various P4 things coming up, one anyway.
I would say that clearly, the public can send us emails or call us. But I would not be, I don't think to hold a regular meeting, to have no business on the agenda and just to have a public comment, I would not support doing that.
There's enough opportunities for folks to speak up.
Yeah. And we've got incredible amount of work to do through our study sessions, so we will be busy and we will be meeting, because June we lose both regular meetings, and then we lose the first one in July. So for the holidays and all of the CML stuff. So at least we're staying busy.
So I just want to make sure I was clear of my question earlier. Because you're saying we're canceling the public or the regular session next Tuesday. So I don't want to set an expectation that people should go there and then they can't speak.
Not next Tuesday. Next Tuesday is May 15th. Right. That's your regular meeting. But on the agenda, you'll have to formally cancel the June 5th.
Oh, sorry. I was thinking next week you're canceling.
Yeah.
No, we have to vote to cancel.
Perfect. Got it. All right. That makes sense.
So it was yes and no.
Yes, we are canceling something next week, just not next week's meeting.
Okay.
So I just want to make sure.
So we're giving plenty of time to make people aware, so yeah.
Correct.
And then we'll have the study session, and that'll be published on the traditional fashion.
And that's the end of my comments there.
Okay. And
Just very quickly, the next meeting, you'll see under reports from the city attorney, there's actually a cover page and 2 memos responding to the public comments. And so if there's going to be something in writing from me, that's normally how I'll do it, so that you'll actually see it on your agenda and you'll get it, unless it's something that would be attorney-client privilege, which we can't do that and register. So as long as it's public record type of material, that's how I'll be doing it. And certainly if you have any comments about the memos or any suggestions or thoughts, please let me know.
As well as comment on it at the meeting.
Under reports from the city attorney, I'll just simply say I submitted these in your packet, and proceed at a prior meeting.
Any other questions? Or adjournment?